If you think that the public outcry over the corruption and bias of the Supreme Court is not impacting the court, then today's decision might just change your mind. It's a dramatic reversal for this court, and the 8-1 decision with Roberts writing the majority opinion is very revealing. It shows that Samuel Alito is running scared. It shows Amy Coney Barrett is anxious to prove she's more than just an anti-abortion zealot, and it shows not a little politicking by the court to try and stop the November tidal wave that could drown the Republican Party, let alone the convicted felon that is their presidential nominee. We're going to get into the ruling in this Second Amendment case, but before we do, would you care to take a guess at which justice, or lack thereof, was the lone dissenter? It sure wouldn't be hard to guess. Who else believes that he is so above the law he doesn't have to care what people think? Who else is so corrupt that he will always vote in favor of corporate interests? And who else has a demonstrated history of being anti-women? Yep, it's Clarence Thomas, the man who refuses to recuse himself from cases involving Donald Trump, even though his wife was actively involved in the fake electors' plot to overthrow the government. Yes, the leading voice of men's rights was the lone single dissenter in a slam dunk of a case. But you know, when I say slam dunk of a Second Amendment case, I am definitely out of touch with reality. Ever since 2008's landmark case, District of Columbia versus Heller, this court has ruled time and again that guns cannot be restricted. Scalia, the strict constructionist who wrote the majority opinion in Heller, twisted himself into an Italian pretzel, trying to claim the Second Amendment was about individual ownership of guns and not about well-regulated militias. And in that ruling, Scalia insisted that individual ownership can be restricted. And yet the court has done the exact opposite ever since, taking the right of gun ownership to ridiculous heights. Just last week, the court overruled a federal ban on bump stocks, a device that turns semi-automatic rifles into automatic. In other words, into machine guns. That ruling disregarded the massacre that occurred in Las Vegas in 2017, when an active shooter killed 58 people and injured 500 more using semi-automatic rifles outfitted with bump stocks. Uvalde, Parkland, Sandy Hook, it doesn't matter how big the massacre or how outgunned the police are. This court has refused to restrict access to guns. But today the court did a surprising about-face. They did a complete 180 turn. In U.S. versus Rahimi, they have finally, unbelievably, ruled in favor of restricting guns. Yeah, I'll give you a moment to recover from falling off your chair. In an 8-1 decision, the court ruled that the government may disarm a Texas man because he is under a domestic violence order. So not only is it a restriction, but it is the gun nut's worst nightmare. The government knocking on your door to take away your guns. The background of this case is so extreme that it's worth summarizing the New York Times. The case begins in 2019 when Zaki Rahimi, a drug dealer in Texas, assaulted his girlfriend and threatened to shoot her if she told anyone, leading her to obtain a restraining order. That order suspended Mr. Rahimi's gun license and prohibited him from possessing firearms. Mr. Rahimi defied the order in flagrant fashion, according to court records. He threatened a different woman with a gun, leading to charges of assault with a deadly weapon. Then, in the space of 2 months, he opened fire in public 5 times. Upset about a social media post from someone whom he had sold drugs, for instance, he shot an AR-15 rifle into a former client's home. When a fast food restaurant declined a friend's credit card, he fired several bullets into the air. Yeah, this is Texas we're talking about. This guy is the walking definition of a gun nut. But because it was Texas, it took this many incidents for anyone to do anything. So the government took away his guns, sentenced him to 6 years in jail, and then he took the government to court. The case made it to the Supreme Court because a Trump-appointed appeals court ruled in Rahimi's favor. The Trump-appointed judge who wrote the opinion basically said, "What's next? Taking away guns from people with speeding tickets? See, and you wonder why we keep saying we need a blue tsunami in November. And this is where the Supreme Court's reversal of Roe comes into play. In essence, today's Second Amendment ruling answers the question, does the Second Amendment allow someone with a gun to terrorize women? Writing the opinion, Roberts not only wrote no, but insisted that the Second Amendment has limits. A constructionist himself, because Republicans only want constructionists, and you only get pushed by the Federalist Society if you are a constructionist, Roberts wrote that restricting access to guns is foundational, writing, "Since the founding, our nation's firearm laws have included provisions preventing individuals who threaten physical harm to others from misusing firearms." Funny, that's never come into play before, but hey, we'll take it. The significance of Roberts writing the opinion is that it allows Alito to duck his head and get on board without having to say anything. Given the ever-growing support for impeachment, the normally loquacious Alito remained quiet. No opining this time about how in English common law, the burning of witches at the stake was not so much a rejection of firing squads per se, but an opportunity for the community to participate. Nope, he quietly got on board. Roberts also provided cover for Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, who took it gratefully. All these guys, and I do mean guys, know that ruling in favor of guns on this case was going to solidify this court as being absolutely 100% anti-women. And it was going to throw fuel on what has been a smoldering fire of the Rovember movement. As a result, Amy Coney Barrett was also eager to prove that she's not anti-women. Having gotten to the court for the sole purpose of tossing Roe, Coney Barrett now has to decide what her role on the court is going to be. She sided with the liberal justices on the Colorado case back in March, but then publicly chastised them in her written decision as being too strident. But you know, one can't help but wonder if there was an implicit message in those statements. A message saying, hey, don't alienate me, I'm trying to join with you. I'm not going to hold my breath on that, but Coney Barrett definitely seems like she does not want to be seen as an Alito or a Thomas. And yes, how is it no surprise that Thomas was the lone dissenter? Well, please, the rights of men, are paramount to Thomas, as is the right of gun manufacturers to sell to anybody, and for men to treat their women any way they want. So, as far as today goes, the Supreme Court hit the pressure release valve. Had they ruled in favor of Rahimi, they would have fanned the flames of growing discontent into a wildfire. So while today's ruling is welcome news, it's our job not to take the heat off. We still need Supreme Court reforms and impeachments, and we don't get that without a blue tsunami in November. We need to keep working at that right up to Election Day. And now, women can do that knowing that a restraining order might, just might, actually keep them safe from a gun nut. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.